and every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest, Cash In, Cash Out, CEO of a fractional SFO and bookkeeping firm, no other than Miss Jen Fizer.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome, Miss Jen on After Cafe. And can you please introduce more about yourself as yes.
Yeah, of course. I am Jen Fizer. I am the owner of MPB, CFO and Bookkeeping. We are a fractional CFO and bookkeeping company. So we help businesses make more money and keep more money, all of the things that we want in business.
Yes, I like that, Miss Jen. Keep more money, save more money, produce more money, multiply the money. That's be awesome.
Mhm.
And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. And today, let's talk about the scaling smarter, when to hire, spend, or say no based on the numbers. Well,
Mhm.
scaling is a series of decisions guided by the numbers. What is the most common emotional or psychological bias that leads founders to hire, spend, or say yes to precisely the wrong time?
Yeah, scaling and hiring are one of my favorite topics. So I'm so happy to talk about this with you today because I think uh, business owners tend to, especially if it's their first hire, right? They don't know when to do it or at what point they are able to afford it. So this is something that I work with a lot of clients on figuring out when to hire, who to hire. Sometimes it's not the person that you think that you need, or not the position that you think you need to be hiring for that's actually correct. So this is one of those things that I think it makes a big difference in your business when you hire in the correct order and who can help your business be more profitable faster.
Yes, more profitable. Oh, I like that,
Yes,
Miss
I love to
Jen.
focus on profit. That's what we want to
Yes.
keep, right? So it doesn't matter how much you're making if you don't get to keep any of it. So one of the things that I really like to focus on first is if you're not younger in business, but if you're a smaller business and you're looking at that first hire that you want to make, a lot of people will think either they need to figure out how to replace themselves so that they can do more, or they want to hire an admin. And my answer to that is always to figure out like where are you spending your time and what are you wasting your time on? And it may be things that your business needs because your business needs admin. It's not a waste of time, but it may be a waste of your time. So figuring out if that's something that you should hire for first, or if you're not good at sales, like if you're not the person that should be talking to potential clients, if you really want to like keep doing the work, whatever the client delivery is, then maybe a salesperson is your first hire. Um, Maybe a service tech, depending on the type of business that you're in. Maybe you're a plumber and you want to add another plumber to your employee list. Figuring out the right hire will mean that you can make more hires down the road.
Yes, indeed. And
Mhm.
Miss Jan, is scaling smarter primarily about accelerating growth with precision, or is it more about de-risking growth to protect the core business?
That's a great question. So the way that I look at scaling, because this is everyone that I talk to always wants to scale. This is like one of the top goals that I hear about is they want to scale. And my first question is always why, and making sure that the reason behind why you want to scale lines up with scaling. Because if somebody is maybe somebody doesn't actually like managing people, that's what happens when you scale your business, right? Like the bigger your business gets, the more people that you're actually having to manage. So if you don't like doing that, then I would question why you want to scale. But overall, as you're scaling, I like to focus on making sure that you're making the correct decisions at the correct times and balancing risk and reward. You don't Sometimes it works to go all in on things up front and build a $1 million company in year one, but sometimes that results in spend like creating too much debt or leveraging the business to a point where it's not actually able to sustain that level of scaling. So just having a plan and sticking to it, making sure that you are growing in a way that's sustainable and matches both your goals and the capabilities of the business are important things to think about along the way.
So, Ms. Jen, how do you define the
Mhm.
right numbers of these decisions? Are they absolute metrics or relative trends or and ratios?
Yeah, that's a if everyone knew exactly when to pull each lever, then business would be much easier, right? Like if there
Yes.
was a blueprint that at this point you do this, and in some businesses you'll want to look at other industries too. Not other industries, look at your industry and see what the people that are ahead of you have done. So going back to my example of a plumber, um, look at other plumbing companies, and in a lot of ways, you can kind of piece together what they did and when, especially if they're uh, fairly active on social media or their websites, being able to tell, how long have they been in business? When did they add their next plumber? Or who is managing their accounts payable? Things like that. Like being able to kind of reverse engineer when they were able to do things. And then there's also like lots of information about industry standards and gross profits and what, looking at the whole picture and what you should be charging, things like that. So that doesn't necessarily answer your question about when you should be pulling the trigger on these things, but if you can get a kind of a lay of the land of what is normal and what, like how much money should one plumber be able to service each year, those are the things that you can use as your KPIs to know when it's time to pull the trigger on another plumber. Or if you are at the point where you can't even keep up with all of the invoicing that needs to be done, then it's time to hire an admin. So one of the kind of KPIs that I like to use for owners is on admin work. If your time is more valuable, if you are taking time out of the field or out of client delivery to send invoices and put together all of those things that an admin person could do, then your company could actually make significantly more money if you weren't doing those things. So being able to evaluate what your time is worth if you were to spend it somewhere else. So what is it that brings money into your company, and how do you do more of that in order to keep the ball rolling and grow? And then from there, like I mentioned, by figuring out like what, I don't know why I keep using plumbers, but like if one plumber should be able to do $300,000 worth of work per year, then if you personally are at $300,000 per year and you're the only plumber at that company, then it's time to hire another one and maybe offload some of what you're doing to the new plumber so that you can start working on things like marketing and making sure that your pipeline is full so that another person can be full. Um, but there's lots of little check marks or checkpoints along the way where if you are feeling overwhelmed, first check to make sure that you are doing things efficiently and you have systems in place. But then from there, it's probably time to hire. And scaling, having a scaling plan, knowing what it is that you like, let's say you're at 1 million and you want to get to 5 million. What does that look like? What does your team need to look like? What do your systems and your equipment and all of those things, what does it need to look like? Those are things that I help with clients with a lot of times. But having then kind of timeline or a roadmap to be able to get there, and knowing when you need to pull all of those levers.
Interesting and empowering answer, Miss Jen. And when to hide decision? What are the key leading and lagging indicator metrics that signal it's time to hire your first non-founder employee versus your first manager?
Hmm. Um, so a first manager is an interesting hire because a lot of times they may not be somebody that's actually generating revenue for you. This is one of those things where like it's kind of a scary hire to make because like going back to my plumber example, like if you hire a plumber, you know that they should be bringing in more revenue with them, right? Because that person is going to go out and do work that will be invoiced for. Whereas a manager is likely not tied directly to a dollar figure or a revenue figure. But if a manager is somebody like I often think about it when things seem to be getting out of control, whether it's quality control or you suddenly have too many people that you're having to manage across a lot of different types of jobs. So like you have your plumbers, you have your admin team, you have a sales team, and suddenly you're pulled in too many different directions. It may be time to hire a sales manager or a field manager that's helping you manage all of those things. And indirectly, it will improve your revenue because then again, those that attention and that focus can then be put back onto revenue generating activities.
Generating activities, and I hope generating money as well. So, how do
Yes,
you
hopefully.
Yes, hopefully. How do you quantify the true fully loaded cost and productivity runtime of a new hire to model their real impact on a runaway and growth?
Hmm. So I always like to say at first too, when I'm coaching my clients on their hiring, a lot of people want to hire somebody and they think that they are immediately going to get that ROI on that person. And that is not fair to your new hire. Even if you are hiring a salesperson, you cannot expect them to start on day one and be closing deals. So being able to quantify over, I would say 60 to 90 days, honestly, is when I would start to really. Now, in that early time, 30 days, you may know whether that's the right person or not, whether they fit with your culture, whether they have the work ethic that you need, whether they're catching on to your systems. Those are all things that you can evaluate in those first 30 days. But then after that, that 30, 60, 90-day check marks, being able to figure out how much revenue they may be generating for your company should be fairly easy to identify. If you hired them on January 1st and then by March 1st your revenue has not increased, then you can start looking at like, well, what are they responsible for doing? If they're an admin, let's say you hired an admin assistant, and your revenue has went up, that actually may be on you, and it may be a matter of like, yes, this person took things off of my plate, but I didn't then turn and use that time to actually create more revenue. I didn't focus on more sales or building my pipeline. That's on you, as long as that person is doing their job to the expectation of what you had laid out. Now, if you had hired a salesperson and they are not hitting their KPIs at that 60 to 90-day mark, that is an indicator that you have hired the wrong person, right? Or that your systems are not right. Maybe you don't have a way that they can actually generate leads. Maybe they're spending so much time on admin work. You're dumping admin work on them that they can't hit the KPIs that they need to be able to bring in revenue. I always like to look at it as like a solid, like before we fire somebody and replace them, like what have we done to make sure that this person can succeed? So Generally, I like to look at take a holistic view of hiring in general, especially if it's the first person in a role. Now, if you have a whole sales team and you hire a new salesperson, you know all of your systems and processes are locked in, they have proven to work, and this person is just not cutting it, then cut them loose, right? Like, don't waste time on somebody that's not going to pan out. But in these first hires and then these first roles in a particular, sales field, like all of those things, making sure that your business is actually set up to help that person succeed is more important than cutting somebody loose.
Miss Jen, when to spend the decision beyond payroll? What is your framework for evaluating marketing or sales spend? How do you move from a test budget to scalable investment based on the numbers?
hmm so as far as like your marketing budgets and things like this, I like to kind of look at again, looking at industry standards and seeing what other people in your industry are spending on some of these things. So, for instance, marketing budget. Usually you're starting at somewhere between 1 and 5% of your total gross revenue is going to be a good indicator of how much money you should be spending on marketing. Um, and then your sales team, like all of these things need to be working together. And if you are looking at your P&L, this is probably a whole nother conversation as far as how you look at your P&L to see where you need to make changes. But that top line revenue, that's how much money your company is bringing in as a whole. And then you'll have your cost of goods sold or your cost of labor, the cost of sales, that will then produce your gross revenue. And then everything under that line is your operating expenses. And your operating expenses is where I will often see people start to lose money. So, in that cost of goods sold, usually businesses are pretty good at knowing what they need to be charging in order to hit those gross profit numbers. And then everything under operating expenses is where they will start to lose money. Their payroll gets out of hand. Their monthly subscriptions shoot way up. So it's turning into like they go from making money to suddenly either breaking even or possibly even losing money below that line. And I know I went on a whole tangent here off of marketing and sales and those things, but being able to evaluate your profit and loss. I personally I like to look at it on a like I'll pull a full year profit and loss and then look at it on a monthly basis. You can sort it so that it shows you each month. And then I also like to do a comparison where you're looking at it as a percentage of revenue. And so, like your cost of goods sold, you as a percentage of revenue, that amount will hopefully stay pretty stable. And then your operating expenses on a dollar figure are also staying pretty stable. But that amount should also, like month to month, that's where you would I first like to look for any wasted money. So as you go through the months, evaluate what you are spending on each individual line item. What can you cut? What are things that are not making sense for your business? Making sure that if you're not using certain things, that that money is not being wasted. And then from there, um, you can also look at like I mentioned a little bit ago, your marketing budget. We're looking at 1 to 5% of your revenue. So if that money, if that marketing budget, let's say you've set it at 2%, is your revenue percentage or your revenue dollar figure going up each month? Or are you relying on revenue to be brought in by referrals? Like, what are figuring out if your marketing is working is a whole nother conversation as well. But you should be able to tell, like, if I shut off my marketing today, if you're running ads or if you are spending money on sponsorships, whatever it may be. If you turned that off today, does your revenue tank? So finding that sweet spot with how much you should be spending on marketing versus how much money you have bringing in or coming in is like I was talking to a client the other day and he was like, I didn't know if my Google ads were working. So we turned them off for a week and we got no leads. And I'm like, well, obviously they're working, right? So you're seeing that each dollar spent results in X amount of dollars coming in. A lot of marketers return on ad spend, seeing how much money that those ads are bringing in. Um, it's probably a long and not answering your question originally, but I overall think it's very important to know your numbers, know what you're spending on certain key lines like your marketing, your payroll, your cost of goods sold, all of those things so that you can make good decisions about your business.
Know your numbers indeed. And Miss Jen, what is one report or dashboard you believe every CEO should review weekly to guide these three decisions: hire, spend, say no?
Oh, yeah. Definitely your P&L. Looking at that on a weekly basis is super important. Knowing what what is coming in and what's going out of your business, those are honestly your absolute most important things to be looking at. And then on top of that, there's a secondary report that not a lot of people actually look at. They don't really even know that it exists. But one of my favorite sayings is that your profit and loss is lying to you. And I don't mean that in like that it's not telling you the truth, but when you are looking at that bottom number, your profit or your loss for the year, I so many times I will hear like, well, that's not what's in my bank account. And I want you to know that that number at the bottom does not include things like what you've paid yourself. If you're paying yourself owner's draws, then those are taken out of your profit or loss. Um, Things like debt payments, those are also not included. So, looking at a secondary report called your statement of cash flows is going to give you kind of that second half of where your cash is going after your profit and loss statement.
Miss John, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and more book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 to the third season, food 101 in sixth season this December, geography 101, love letters, movie 101, music 101 are in fourth season, Science 101, Sex 101, second season of my baby podcast, Law 101, Mental Health 101, and Bible Verses 101. And coming these December, Entrepreneur 101. So please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Jen, looking forward, how will AI and real-time data analytics change the art of this decision? Will it remove the gut feeling entirely, or it just make it more informed?
I think it will definitely make things more informed. There's a certain, at least currently, there's a certain level of nuance that AI doesn't have, and knowing how you apply some of these numbers to business decisions. But AI is doing a great job of being able to show you data more quickly and more accurately um, than it has been in the past, right? Like I wouldn't let it make decisions for you, but as far as gathering information and making it more accessible, it's doing a great job.
Yes, definitely. Great job for sure. And Miss Jen, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Thank you for
Thank you so much for
empowering.
having me.
Yes, thank you for empowering our business. And can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your business, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
So you can find me on LinkedIn, as you see. We have a website that is currently under review, but mkbcfo.com. You can email me at jen@mkbcfo.com. I love helping answer questions. If anybody doesn't know how to read a P&L or what numbers should be important to them, I'm always happy to have a conversation.
Yes, people, lots about Miss Jen Fizer. Because if you support her, for sure, more and more empowering business will rise. So, Miss Jen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Monica, people, see you soon.